Many burnt to death in Lagos tanker explosion. Nigerian governors call for prosecution of PLATEAU attackers. EU leaders unite over Trump tariffs. And in sports, DROGBA says African football going backwards.
This is ANN News.
I am Rotimi Akintunde. It's one of the busiest road arteries in Lagos, and rush hour traffic was in full swing. Workers were heading home to what they must have thought would be a restful pre-weekend night. Then they were trapped in what would be an explosion of the worst kind from an errant petrol tanker whose brake had failed. The explosion rocked the entire area and jolted those in their cars, trapping many and immediately sinking some inside their vehicles. It was on the famous Lagos-Ibadan Expressway at the point known as Otedola Bridge, just before the border with Ogun State. Latest reports say at least 70 cars were involved, and occupants were either burnt to death or incurred very serious injuries. The highway was littered with charred vehicles and corpses of the unfortunate, some of whom were said to have been burnt beyond recognition. Security and traffic control agencies sprung to action, rescuing people and directing traffic away from the danger that lurked there. The Lagos Transport Management Agency sent a message that warned that the effect of the fire would be colossal and that the traffic backlog would be monumental. That was an understatement, as the entire city of 21 million people was at a standstill. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is one and only major link in and out of the city going west. The Lagos State government has expressed sadness at the incident and has commiserated with the families of victims who lost their lives and property in the tanker explosion. Commissioner for Information Strategy, Kehinde Bamigbeton, says the incident is a sad development and that it was most unfortunate and regrettable. He said the government will put measures in place to ensure the safety of lives and property of all residents. He said Governor Ambode had directed that officials move into the area to ensure that help gets to those in need. Governor Ambode had also urged motorists to adhere to the safety standards and state traffic laws to prevent a recurrence of such accidents. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed shock and sorrow over the fatal tank explosion. In a statement, he said, quote, "I am very sad to learn of the tragic loss of lives, tens of vehicles, property and other valuables in the petrol tanker fire." He then expressed his deepest condolences to the government and people of Lagos. He said this is sadly the greatest tragedies the country has witnessed in recent times. Lagos House of Assembly Speaker Mudashiru Obasa also expressed condolences to the families of the victims. He described this unfortunate accident as a sad development and says he shares the feeling of those who lost their loved ones in this incident. Nigeria's former Vice President Atiku Abubakar on his Twitter page said his thoughts are with Nigerians who have lost lives and property in the tanker fire. He also prayed for the first responders who have been working hard to get the area back to normal. On his Twitter handle, at Dr. Olufumilayo, a Nigerian doctor resident in the UK, wrote, quote, "I have been in the UK a few years now and never have I ever seen a petrol tanker on the road. Never. Countries that value human lives transport petrol goods using buried pipelines and cargo rate systems. Having petrol tankers and trailers on the road will always cause tragedy." End quote. This is not the first time this type of accident had happened at the same spot in Lagos. 8 years ago, another massive tanker fire happened in the same area. More than 9 persons were burnt to death in that one. 54 vehicles and 1 tricycle were also sinked. We will return after these messages. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is ANN News. The killings in Plateau State are still getting reactions from around the world. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has expressed concern and expressed worries about the more than 200 lives that were lost in that attack. In a statement, Guterres urged all concerned government, regional organizations, civil society and other relevant actors to work together to find acceptable and lasting solutions to the conflicts. He says the trend is detrimental to regional stability. Meanwhile, Amnesty International has accused the Nigerian government of encouraging murderers because it has not held to account those who are fueling rising insecurity in the country. The group said in a statement on Thursday that it had independently verified estimated figures that show more than 1,800 persons have been murdered in 17 states in Nigeria this year. That figure doubles last year's numbers. The numbers are credited to killings as a result of farmers-herders conflict, communal clashes, Boko Haram attacks and banditry. It expressed the urgency of bringing to book those who are suspected of committing crimes. 36 state governors are asking the federal government to arrest and prosecute those behind the incessant killings across the country. It appears this call was deemed necessary after last weekend's killing of more than 200 persons in 3 Plateau local government areas. At the end of their governors' forum, the governors also agreed to hold a security meeting with service chiefs to discuss steps that need to be taken to stop the continued killings in the country. President Buhari says the killings across the country should not be politicized, but many say that what followed his plea could be construed as politicizing the issue. The president's aides are saying that deadly attacks resulting in high numbers of deaths did not begin under this government, but rather something through which Nigerians lived during PDP's 16-year rule. The presidential media aide Femi Adesina accused the PDP of playing politics by declaring a 7-day mourning period in memory of those who died in the Plateau attack. PDP, the nation's major opposition party, says its flag would be flown at half-staff for 7 days at all its locations and buildings across the country. Plateau State Governor Simon Lalong has condemned the violent protest to the government house in Jos, led by the Christian Association of Nigeria (CAN), in reaction to the killings in the state. He characterized the protests as the saddest commentaries in the state's collective resolve to stand as a people united against evil. He blamed the Christian Association of Nigeria for allowing the protest to be hijacked by hoodlums. He calls the demonstrations an affront on the authority of the state. He assured citizens of the state that his government will fish out the perpetrators of the crime, but will not just watch disgruntled citizens throw the state into anarchy and chaos. The Director General of the National Youth Service Corps, Brigadier General Suleiman Kazare, has allayed fears that the Corps may withdraw its members from Plateau State. He said that rather than take them out of the state, arrangements have been made to guarantee their safety. He was addressing protocol officers in Abuja on Thursday. He urged the officers to make security a major part of the planning process in any NYC event. He also told them to embrace new ideas in their event management to conform with global trends. Stay with us. We will be back with African stories after this break.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. Reports a number of people killed in Ethiopia's western Benishangul-Gumuz region has risen to 10 since unrest started on Monday. The cause of the violence was not immediately clear, but residents say mobs were attacking ethnic minorities that had settled in the region. 38 others were reported injured in the violence. The region's president added on Thursday that they believe the 40 suspects in their custody have been given financial incentives to commit violence. The conflict comes amid increasing ethnic unrest throughout the country. Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has sacked the head of the country's Electoral Commission on Thursday for misbehavior and incompetence. Information Minister Mustafa Abdulhamid said the removals of Charlotte Osei and her two deputies were based on a recommendation by a special committee set up to investigate complaints against them. Osei has denied the accusations. She was appointed by former President John Mahama in mid-2015 and she successfully supervised the 2016 general election won by Akufo-Addo, then the leader of the main opposition. Egypt's Interior Ministry has said that security forces have killed 10 militants who were involved in a bombing that targeted the convoy of Alexandria's former security chief 3 months ago. The ministry added that 10 were killed in a shootout in Beira province and Asyut, while 2 others were arrested. It said those targeted were members of Hassan, a jihadist group which authorities have linked to the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood. The Brotherhood denies any links with militancy and says it has solely political aims. Democratic Republic of Congo moved closer to declaring its Ebola outbreak over on Wednesday when the Health Ministry said it had completed surveillance of the last people who came in contact with patients and had not found any new cases. If no further cases of the deadly disease are confirmed after one more 3-week incubation period, Congo will be able to officially declare an end to the outbreak, which is believed to have killed 29 people since April. A Moroccan court has sentenced the local journalist who covered protests on economic and social problems in Northern Rif region to 3 years in prison. El Madoni, who was arrested in July last year, was tried on the charge of not reporting a crime against state security after receiving a call from a Moroccan national living abroad, saying he would introduce arms to Morocco. His sister said it is a cruel sentence against a citizen and a journalist who did not commit any criminal activity. Freedom of expression may shrink further in Egypt, where lawmakers have approved the first reading of a bill that, when passed, would monitor popular social media users in the guise of combating false news. The bill will place internet users with at least 5,000 followers under the supervision of Egypt's Supreme Council for Media Regulation. Association of Freedom of Thought and Expression reports more than 500 websites have been blocked so far in Egypt. Earlier this month, lawmakers passed a law on cybercrime that allows authorities to block any website or account that threatens Egypt's national security or economy. Administrators of such websites face jail time or fines. Domestic and international human rights groups have regularly criticized violations of freedom of expression by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's government. Madagascar's Prime Minister Christian Say has put an end to speculations and announced a date for the country's election. Madagascans will head to the polls for the first round of presidential election early in November, while the second round will hold in December. Head of Malagasy government believes that the publication of the electoral calendar will help calm the political tension in the country that has been mounting in the inland nation since the end of April. Opposition parties have been demanding the resignation of the head of state. Libyan strongman Khalifa Haftar has announced on Thursday the liberation of Derna city in the eastern region from radical Islamist militias. The military leader promised residents a new era of freedom, security and peace. Derna had been held by a varied alliance of Islamist and jihadist militias, including groups close to Al-Qaeda. The Libyan National Army launched its offensive last month to seize the city, a coastal town of nearly 150,000 people east of Tripoli. We will be back after these messages. Stay with us.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to international stories. European leaders pledged on Friday to stand firmly against protectionism, with US and China on their mind. They called for a new EU law to screen foreign investments. Although their crucial meeting in Brussels focused more on migration, they said the tariffs US imposed on EU aluminium and steel could not be justified. They support a legal challenge by the EU. They also back a reprisal tariff on US products. As the EU wants to protect its own industries and retain technologies, it plans to stop China from dumping its goods in Europe and subsidizing its companies to give them unfair pricing advantage. EU leaders did not mention US or China in their joint text. Ken Isaacs, the U.S. nominee to lead the UN Migration Agency, was knocked out of the race on Friday after coming third behind Portugal's Antonio Vitorino and Costa Rica's Laura Thompson in a secret ballot of member states in Geneva. After 4 rounds of voting, Vitorino, a former European Commissioner and Portuguese Deputy Prime Minister, was declared the winner by acclamation. He will lead the International Organization for Migration for a 5-year term. Isaacs, Vice President of U.S. evangelical charity Samaritan Spurs, had caused controversy after being forced to apologize for tweets and social media posts in which he disparaged Muslims. Now to sports. Ivory Coast former striker Didier Drogba says African football has suffered a big setback after Senegal's exit sealed the continent's worst World Cup showing in 3.5 decades. Senegal became the first team in World Cup history to go out on the fair play rule after losing to Colombia on Thursday. Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria and Tunisia had already fallen at the group stage. Drogba said Africa is going to be successful one day, but needs to think again how it approaches the big competitions. He said this is a big step back. Drogba was speaking on BBC Sports program Match of the Day. Maradona is no longer FIFA's ambassador. FIFA has removed him and says he would no longer be paid because of his poor conduct during the Argentina-Nigeria match. Maradona had celebrated Argentine's second goal by raising his middle finger at fans who were trolling him when the score was at 1-1 draw. FIFA considers his behavior embarrassing, so he would forfeit the fee he normally receives from the World Soccer governing body for bringing the spotlight to any World Cup match he witnessed live. FIFA also said Maradona must be of good behavior during the rest of the competition, or he may be banned from the stadium. Oh well, that's what you get for bad behavior. That does it for us. For details on these and other stories, visit our website annafrica.net and our social media platforms ANN Africa TV. And conversation continues on Twitter at ANN Africa TV and on Facebook ANN Africa TV.